Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times news podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes. To keep in touch with us, use our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, which are all at Q and Review. That's CUEANDREVIEW. Or get in touch via information@qandreview.com. That's information at CUEANDREVIEW.com. Please like and share our podcast and give us any constructive feedback.
This article is from the Glasgow Times, date 18th March 2022, from the opinion section. All in a night's work for our driver John, by the secret Glasgow taxi driver. We're all in dire need of as much good news as we can get right now. So it was magic to read a positive story about one of my fellow drivers from the weekend. His name is John Lundy, and he was out on duty on Saturday night, doing his bit to help people get home safely. We all know there's a real challenge with the amount of taxi drivers at peak times right now, not only in Glasgow, by the way. But it's only right to champion the ones who are out there keeping the city ticking over. Anyway, John had a hire at the Doubletree in the city centre in the early hours, or as many of us still like to call it, the Old Thistle. He picked up a group who had clearly had a ball at a big charity event in the hotel night on a St Patrick's Day fundraising, as it happens. Well, John was sitting there with his passengers ready to take them home when a poor wee soul wandered up to him all alone and asked, "Can you help me?" Without hesitation and with the support of his passengers, John immediately sought to do just that. This person was not from Glasgow, was completely lost, had no money and no battery on her phone. Not a great place to be in the small hours. She had lost her pals who were staying at the Travel Lodge. The name of the hotel was all that our John needed to know. John, with the permission of his patient and understanding passengers, very quickly got the individual back to her pals, even charging her phone for her on the way. And that's the only thing he charged. It goes without saying, not a penny was asked for on this occasion. So the girl was safely returned to her pals, and the original passengers were taken home, and then John got on with his next hire, working on until the streets were cleared. John Lundy, thank you for representing the city and the trade with such class. I know for a fact these things happen most nights. You just don't always hear of them. So while you may curse at the shortage of drivers at peak times, let's be grateful for the ones we do have. Stay safe. That article was by the secret Glasgow taxi driver. This article is from the Glasgow Times, date 18th March 2022, from the lifestyle section. Nomad Wars Duo World Tournament raises $1,000 for Emo's homeless charity, by Sarah Pacciaroni. A Glasgow homeless charity will receive funds raised by a global gaming tournament where homeless players compete against each other to create an undefeated civilization. Nomad Wars Duo saw 230 people from all over the world play a 2v2 random game in Game Age of Empires Definitive Edition in knockout bouts over the course of 2 months. Players logged in from Europe, North America and Australia and were watched by fans using streaming services, Twitch and Discord. The initiative has collected more than $1,000 for people with experience of homelessness, among which are the beneficiaries of Almus Glasgow. The charity operates 2 charity shops in the city and runs an outreach project to support people who are street homeless. We'll use the funds to help provide a home, support and meaningful work experience for people in need. The aim of the game was to create an undefeated civilization grown from 3 homeless nomadic villagers with gameplay lasting several hours. The final sequence of games took over 4 hours to complete, with organiser Neil from Glasgow officiating every step of the way. Neil, who uses Paradox303 on Twitch and Paradox303 on Twitter, said, "A few things brought me to the charity. Firstly, I'm local. Secondly, I think the homeless are often misunderstood. Thirdly, the game mode we are using, you start without a clear home or base, so everything fits together in terms of the charity linked to the game. I'm chuffed to see so much raised. The initial goal was $500, so I'm really pleased to see that doubled. This time of year is particularly bad for the homeless, especially in the Glasgow weather, so I'm very proud of everyone coming together. I've had a lot of positive comments that it was a great charity to choose. And I went over some of the misconceptions about the homeless on stream, dispelling the usual comments like druggies, etc. More often than not, homelessness results in drug use, but not the other way around. They are just a population of people that are constantly looked down upon." Neil set up a Just Giving page to convert donations in different currencies from around the globe, attracting comments "charity and fun" or "great cause." And Neil started the ball rolling with his own personal donation. Director of Emos Glasgow, Richard Allwood, said, "We can't thank Neil, also known as Paradox303, enough. To have donations coming in from across the world to support our homelessness charity is amazing. At the time of rising living costs, we're sadly seeing increasing numbers of people in need on the streets of Glasgow. Homelessness is something that can affect us all, and I'm impressed Neil took the time to dispel some of the myths about people experiencing homelessness online. The money raised will help provide a caring home, hot meals and support for people at a time they need it most, and help fund the support needed to help people move on in their lives. To make a donation to Emos Glasgow for fundraising ideas or how to help, you can visit https://emos.org.uk/Glasgow. That article was by Sarah Paccianari.
Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of March. Citizens Advice Charity warns of mental health crisis after a rise in the number of people in debt. An article written by Lauren Gilmore, Facebook community reporter. More than 3/4 of adults in debt during the pandemic say that their mental health has suffered, a charity has revealed. New polling for Citizens Advice Scotland, or CAS, by YouGov found that 77% of adults in Scotland who found themselves in debt during the COVID-19 pandemic said the issue had affected their mental health. Around 30% of respondents said that it affected them a great deal, and 47% said that it impacted them a fair amount. Previous work by CAS suggested that around 600,000 people, the population of Glasgow, encountered new debt problems throughout the period, whether they were getting into new debt problems or seeing existing debts escalate. The charity is expecting households to experience more pressure in the coming months with rising bills and prices in the shops, and is running the Debt Happens campaign to ensure people have access to the support they need. CAS financial health spokesperson Sarah Jane Dunn said, "The vicious link between financial pressures and mental well-being is something we should all understand. Money worries and mental health issues often go hand in hand, with emotional stress often being the cause and consequence of financial stress. It may be that you need specialist advice, which our network can help through our local Citizens Advice Bureau, as well as connecting you with other local support organisations. Or you may just want to go at your own pace, using our online money map and public advice site, which can help by suggesting ways to boost your income, reduce your outgoings, and make the most out of your money. We want people to understand that they aren't alone in dealing with their debt or the impact on their mental well-being that comes with it. Hundreds of thousands of people are not only facing the stigma of debt, but the added stigma of poor mental health. We want you to know that there's nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed about. Help is always available. An article written by Lauren Gilmore. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of March. Glasgow UCU strikes. Here is all you need to know. An article written by Lauren Gilmore, Facebook community reporter. A third wave of strikes is set to get underway at two city universities this week in a row over pay, pensions and conditions. University and college union members at Glasgow and Strathclyde universities will walk out again from today until Friday in 5 days of consecutive strike action. Workers recently took 10 days of action from Monday, February the 14th until Wednesday, March the 2nd. Lecturers and support staff have been taking part in industrial action over claims that pay and conditions within the sector are deteriorating and also to cuts to pensions. The union says that employers have forced through a 35% cut in guaranteed retirement income. They also claim they've had a 25.5% real terms cut since 2009. The UCU also says that more than 70,000 academics and support staff are employed on insecure contracts. Joe Grady, General Secretary of the UCU, said, "Vice-Chancellors and principals across the UK have the power to end these disputes. The money is there to pay staff properly, tackle punishing working conditions and reverse pension cuts that will devastate retirement incomes." The UCU is calling for an immediate £2,500 pay rise for all employees at the universities affected. They also want zero-hour contracts eliminated and a reversal of all pension cuts. It's been argued that universities across the country can afford to meet the demands of staff. Figures obtained by the UCU show that the sector's total income is around £41.9 billion annually, with reserves of around £46.8 million. The strikes are expected to cause some disruption of study for students, but Glasgow and Strathclyde universities have both previously told the Glasgow Times that a large majority were working normally. Some members of the union are taking what's known as action short of a strike, where they may not be completing work over and above their contracted hours. UCU lecturers could also vote for a marking boycott in future if the dispute is not solved. A spokesperson from Glasgow University previously told the Glasgow Times that it regrets the UCU was proceeding with industrial action and that it was doing everything they could to minimise disruption. It also said that it's continuing to engage with campus trade unions across the university. Strathclyde University previously said that it was making arrangements to minimise any disruption to students and was fully expecting classes to run as normal. An article written by Lauren Gilmore. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of March. Glasgow's golden generation is using music to help people with dementia. An article written by Esther Tarnai, reporter. A Glasgow charity is able to include people with dementia in their activities thanks to new funding. Glasgow's Golden Generation has received £5,066 in a boost from Foundation Scotland for a member of staff to dedicate their time towards integrating people with dementia into their programmes. Lindsay Nielsen said she's delighted to be able to help the older adults the organisation cares for. She added, "About 60% of those who attend our day centre have dementia, so that's quite a high number. But what's important for us is that rather than doing activities that are aimed fully at them, it's about making the things that we're already doing dementia-friendly, so that people can be included because that is what they want." Thanks to the extra resources, the charity will now be able to involve its service users with dementia in activities like sing-alongs and gardening, which can improve their mental health and sense of community. The newly appointed dementia champion said, "Your favourite song often takes you back to memories, and it can be a good way of starting a conversation with people. First, we start with Scottish songs, and then we ask them what does that song remind them of, and what's a time it takes them back to. It can be a really nice way to start a conversation, especially for someone with dementia who isn't always fully aware of where we are and everything that's happening around them at the present. When you bring in music, it gives you a window and gives you an opportunity to talk to them, and there's no confusion there because they talk about music and how it makes them feel quite easily." Glasgow's Golden Generation also runs a befriending service, social clubs, gives advice and teaches service users to use technology. They run 2 activity sessions with lunch in between to give carers time to run errands and service users a sense of belonging. Ms Nielsen added, "Often we have carers who need some rest and some time for themselves. A lot of the times it's family members, so a husband and wife, for example, and the person who's caring needs some time to be able to look after themselves. But also, a big thing is going to the chemist or doing shopping. When they bring the person they're caring for with them, it's an extra layer of things being quite complex. This just gives them that time, and they know the person will be safe." An article written by Esther Tarnay. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of March. Man in Glasgow's Scotstoun pleads for council to fix flood problem. An exclusive front-page article by Esther Tarnay, reporter. A Glasgow man is in a desperate plea to get help with a massive flooding problem in front of his home. Sam Whitehouse, who lives in Scotstoun at the corner of Ardsloy Place and Earl Street, says he's sometimes left with up to 6 inches of water outside his front door when the rain is heavy, making it difficult to leave. It's claimed that a blocked drain on the street stops the water from escaping, and instead it slowly soaks the nearby grass area, which causes further problems with mud. Mr Whitehouse said, "It's not even a puddle, it's a flood. Every time there's heavy rain, we have to make our way through 6 inches, maybe even more, of water. The mud has accumulated because the water doesn't drain away, it just slowly seeps away, and the flood can last for days." The 68-year-old explained that it's common for him and his neighbours to wear wellies just to leave their houses. It also affects their day-to-day lives and the services they receive. He added, "You can't get parked, and when we get bin deliveries, the bin men can't get in because they don't want to get their feet soaked. It also causes problems for people who are trying to get onto the cycle path. Particularly as they're coming down the hill, and when they hit that deep water, it's dangerous, and some of them have actually come off their bikes because the depth of the water stops them in their tracks." The Glasgow Times reported a similar issue on the nearby junction of Earl Street and Redgate Place in 2018, where residents claimed floods had been constant for over 20 years. Glasgow City Council has confirmed that it recently carried out works to improve drainage in this area. According to Mr Whitehouse, nothing has been done on his side of the street, despite demand from the community. He added, "I've been in contact with the Roads Department on numerous occasions over the years to try and see if anyone would come out. They've sent people out. On one occasion they sent 2 men out to get them to clear some of the mud away, but they only ended up doing half the work, and they walked away because it was getting too heavy as they got nearer to where the original drain is." In the past years, he claims the problem has got worse as the volume of the water is spreading out. Following the devastation of storms Dudley, Eunice and Franklin last month, the residents are now at breaking point and demand that Glasgow City Council fix the problem. A spokesperson from the council said it's not aware of any flooding concerns at the corner of Ardsloy Place and Earl Street, as shown by records for the last 3 years. It claims that officers will now be sent out to assess the area and carry out works if needed. An exclusive article written by Esther Tarnay. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of March. Martin Lewis calls for political intervention on the cost of living crisis. An article written by Joshua Searle, SEO journalist. Martin Lewis has called for political intervention on the cost of living crisis, as he warned he's virtually out of tools to help people. The Chancellor is reportedly gearing up to slash fuel duty in his spring statement, as Boris Johnson pursues long-term measures to guard against future energy bill pressures. Rishi Sunak appeared on Sunday to hint at help for motorists in his so-called mini-budget, with measures to prevent filling up cars from being prohibitively expensive expected to be unveiled on Wednesday. There are suggestions the Chancellor could temporarily cut fuel duty by as much as 5 pence per litre to support families and businesses through the cost of living crisis. Forecourt prices have risen sharply since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with average prices at a record 165.9 pence per litre for petrol and 177.3 pence per litre for diesel. With pressure mounting on Mr Sunak to act, he told the BBC on Sunday that, of course, he was prepared to step in to help those on tightly squeezed budgets. However, the number 11 incumbent added that he can't solve every problem, as he conceded Britons faced a difficult time amid ballooning inflation. There are also reports that the Chancellor is considering raising the threshold at which people start paying national insurance. The Times said the move would take an estimated 150,000 people out of paying next month's planned 1.25 percentage point national insurance contribution rise. April's increase is designed to pay for clearing the NHS backlog caused by the pandemic as part of a health and social care levy. The money-saving expert, Martin Lewis, also appeared on the BBC on Sunday. He told Sophie Rayworth that political intervention was necessary. Mr Lewis said, just on energy, on a Conservative estimate, we're talking a £1,300 increase on bills and about 10 million people in fuel poverty. As the money-saving expert, I'm virtually out of tools to help people now. It's not something money management can fix. We need political intervention. An article written by Joshua Searle. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of March. Shoeless man grabbed Glasgow Co-op security guard by the throat. An article written by Katrina Stewart, columnist and reporter. A shoeless man racially abused and then punched a supermarket security guard after being refused entry to the shop. Stuart Farmer came very close to a jail sentence for the assault on August the 5th last year at the Argyle Street Co-op branch. Glasgow Sheriff Court heard how, around 2 p.m, the 53-year-old was approached by Keza Chowdhury and told he was not allowed to enter the shop. Mr Farmer from Dumbarton was highly intoxicated and not wearing anything on his feet. He started shouting and swearing, and there was, as the court was told, a brief exchange between the two men because Mr Farmer became more aggressive. He started shouting P with 3 asterisks, B with 6 asterisks at Mr Chowdhury before then grabbing him by the throat and striking him to the side of his head. Police were called and took Mr Farmer to London Road Police Station. Mr Farmer's defence brief said, "There's no doubt that this was an appalling way to behave, and Mr Farmer, in any discussions I've had with him, has come across as genuinely horrified by the way he behaved. The fact that he wasn't wearing any shoes perhaps shows his level of intoxication." His lawyer said Mr Farmer has taken steps to address his drink problem and has been attending various support services. Sheriff Vincent Lunny said this was racially motivated and then does end up in a nasty assault. This sort of behaviour is getting very close to a jail sentence. It's an appalling offence. This is a disgraceful offence. I take into account you have no recollection of it, but that's a double-edged sword. Calling them something because of where they're from and the colour of their skin is unacceptable. I would have been minded to jail you for this. Mr Farmer was placed on a community payback order with 18 months of supervision, reduced from 2 years thanks to his early guilty plea. He was also ordered to carry out 90 hours of unpaid work, down from 120 hours. Mr Farmer was tagged for 18 weeks, which will keep him at home from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. The sheriff added, "This represents an escalation in your behaviour. A man of your age shouldn't be behaving this way. No one should be behaving this way, but a man of your age should know better." An article written by Katrina Stewart. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of March. The Bearsden family opening up its home to Ukrainian refugees. An exclusive article written by Hannah Roger, Westminster editor, The Herald. More than 8,000 Scots have signed up to offer accommodation and help to Ukrainians fleeing the war against Russia. They're among more than 140,000 across the UK who have done so via the government's Home for Ukraine scheme. Near Glasgow, one family hope they will help to provide refugees a safe place to call home, a friendly welcome and as much a sense of normality as they can, given what their home country is suffering. Alan Cowan and his wife Angela have signed up for Homes for Ukraine and with the charity Sanctuary Foundation, hoping to either lend out their spare rooms for those in need or act as befrienders and mentors to those who come to Scotland. Speaking to our sister title, The Herald on Sunday, Mr Cowan, a retired solicitor from Bearsden, said he was reliant on help from the charity to find a Ukrainian person in need of assistance, as he had little faith in the Home Office system. It comes after another British man, Max Fox, travelled to Poland on Friday, saying he was proactively looking for someone to host in his Lancashire home and criticised the government's current setup. Mr Cowan explained, "My wife and I haven't yet made a final decision on what we're going to do. It might be mentoring, it might be having someone stay in our house. We're both retired and our kids have grown up and gone away, so we do have spare bedrooms in our house. We're still waiting on more details from the scheme, as they seem to be few and far between at the moment. He said that they're yet to make contact with anyone in Ukraine, as we wouldn't know where to start, adding, "We're having to rely on the charity to point us in the right direction. I doubt very much that the Home Office will put people our way. I don't have a lot of confidence in the Home Office and their past performance. I think the hope is with these charities, who seem to have a track record of helping people from previous refugee crises." The UK government's Home for Ukraine scheme, being led by Levelling Up and Community Secretary Michael Gove, is dependent on British nationals identifying people in Ukraine who need help themselves and offering to sponsor them. Mr Gove has insisted this is the quickest way to get people matched up with sponsors and into the UK. However, some charities have warned that the approach could backfire and lead to chaos. The method, Mr Cowan argued, was impractical for many people, explaining, "I wouldn't be comfortable going on social media and advertising that we're offering help. First of all, I don't use social media, and I don't want to either, not because of my age, but because I don't like living my life online. I would rather do this through people with experience in this area." The Home Office has made such a mess of previous refugee cases. This time they're putting the onus onto the public, and there's clearly a great deal of willingness in the British public to help people. But I think the government made various missteps at the beginning when they insisted that Ukrainians had to get visas to get in. Having visited Ukraine in the 70s, Mr Cowan said he connected with the plight of ordinary civilians having to flee the conflict, and it inspired him to want to help. He said, "I've got a slight connection with Kiev. I was there in 1979 when it was still part of the Soviet Union. I was there with two friends from university on a semi-official trip. In those days, the USSR was a very centralised state, and although Ukraine was nominally a republic, they did whatever Moscow told them to do. We weren't particularly conscious of it being specifically Ukrainian at that time. Obviously, with everything that's happened, myself and most of the rest of us in this country have become very aware that Ukrainians do feel themselves to be their own people and their own nation. As Scots, we can, to some extent, sympathise with that." If successful in finding a Ukrainian person to sponsor, Mr Cowan said he and his family would like to make them feel welcome in Glasgow and ensure that they were comfortable, adding, "If we were to offer accommodation, we want to make sure that they were comfortable and we were comfortable with them and we can get along together. If that doesn't happen, then we would probably make a point of meeting with people and showing them a bit of Glasgow, taking them to see some of the countryside, just generally trying to help them settle, even if it's only for a short period. I'm assuming most of these folk will want to go back to Ukraine when this is all over." While thousands of people in the UK have offered to open their homes to Ukrainians, the scheme only officially began processing registrations and applications on Friday. It remains to be seen how many of the 140,000 who have registered are successful in hosting refugees. An exclusive article written by Hannah Roger. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 21st of March. Some COVID rules being lifted in Scotland from today. An article written by Jodie Harrison, reporter. Coronavirus restrictions in Scotland are being eased, despite infection levels said to be at record highs. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon confirmed last week that from today many remaining restrictions will end. However, the move comes in the wake of figures from the Office for National Statistics showing levels of COVID infection in Scotland have hit another record high. Businesses such as bars and restaurants are no longer required to retain customer contact details. The legal requirement for firms, places of worship and others to take reasonably practicable measures set out in Scottish Government coronavirus guidance is also being ended. However, the legal requirement to wear face coverings in shops, hospitality venues and public transport remains in place. Case numbers have now risen for 7 weeks in a row, with 376,300 people likely to have had the virus last week. That's 1 in 14, up from 1 in 18 people the previous week. The surge in infections prompted the First Minister to row back on plans to scrap the legal requirement to wear face coverings on public transport and other indoor settings. This had been due to be converted to guidance, with the situation to be reviewed early in April. However, with the other restrictions being eased, Labour called for action to help the economy. The party wants adults to be given high street vouchers to get people spending again, but also says there should be a public information campaign so that people can be confident about the return to public places. Holyrood Finance spokesman Daniel Johnson said businesses across Scotland will breathe a sigh of relief as restrictions are lifted today, but there's no room for complacency. The challenges facing Scotland's economy didn't start with COVID, and they won't end today. The cost of living crisis will pile added pressure onto businesses as people cut costs to try to make ends meet. But once again, the SNP and the Tory governments are failing to get to grips with the challenge. We need real action to get our economy moving again and undo the lasting damage done to our high streets by both the pandemic and by 15 years of SNP mismanagement. This means clearer communication and more ambition from the SNP government. Without these, we're going to see our vibrant and important towns and cities decline. We can't afford to miss this opportunity to build a stronger economy and get our high streets thriving again. A Scottish Government spokeswoman said ministers had just published an ambitious plan that sets out how we can transform Scotland's economy, with this featuring a ruthless focus on working with business and industry to deliver the changes we want to see. She added, "We're all too aware of the impact the COVID pandemic has had and continues to have on retailers, high streets and the economy. That's why, since the start of the pandemic, businesses have benefited from more than £4.5 billion in support. We're taking action to help retailers and communities recover, not least through our £80 million Economic Recovery Fund and the forthcoming retail strategy. We'll also listen carefully to any constructive suggestions on what further steps we might take." An article written by Jodie Harrison.
Evening Times, March 21. Lifestyle. Glasgow's forgotten Nobel Prize hero who fought for peace and helped women get the vote. Report by Anne Fotheringham. He was a Nobel Peace Prize winner, played a significant role in bringing about women's suffrage, and was National Labour Party leader 3 times. But how many Glaswegians know of Arthur Henderson, born in Anderston in 1863? When his father, a textile worker, died in 1872, leaving the family in poverty, Arthur was just 10 years old, but had to leave school to work in a photographer's shop. When his mother remarried, the family moved to Newcastle upon Tyne, and Arthur went back to school for 3 years, before starting an apprenticeship at the local foundry. He joined the Iron Founders Union at the age of 18, and went on to hold office at local, district and national level. Arthur married Eleanor Watson in 1888, and they had 4 children. Their eldest son was killed in action during World War I. In 1896, the family moved to Darlington, where Arthur became its first Labour mayor. In 1900, he was one of the 129 trade union and socialist delegates who passed Keir Hardie's motion to create the Labour Representation Committee, the LRC, the forerunner of the Labour Party. In 1903, he was elected as MP for Barnard Castle. In 1908, when Hardie resigned as leader of the Labour Party, Henderson was elected to replace him. He was leader a further twice. With socialist reformer Sidney Webb, he largely wrote the party constitution. He was a determined campaigner for peace and a central figure at the World Disarmament Conference in Geneva in 1934, the year he won the Nobel Prize. According to the Nobel Prize website, Arthur was recognized internationally as an apostle of peace. He backed universal suffrage, votes for all, and in early 1916 threatened to resign from government if the proposed parliamentary reform bill did not include women's suffrage. He died in October 1935. Report by Anne Fotheringham. Evening Times, March 21. Opinion. John Molyneux points out that May's local elections are approaching. Nominations are open for candidates standing in May's local elections, and I am delighted to be among them. It has been an absolute privilege to serve the Pollokshields ward for the past 5 years, and I hope voters put their trust in me again. Every day I am inspired by the activism and commitment of people in my ward, making a difference and spreading hope. Unfortunately, recent days have seen stories suggesting that not all Glasgow candidates share the values of equality and social justice that voters should expect of those seeking to represent them. For Labour, that includes a senior spokesperson for the Evangelical Alliance, an organisation which defends the abhorrent practice of so-called conversion therapy for LGBT+ people. For the Conservatives, it includes Jamie Robertson in Denniston, a former UKIP candidate who, it has emerged, follows white supremacist content on YouTube, including from the former leader of the Ku Klux Klan. It has also been revealed that Bruce White, the Conservative candidate for the Langside ward, made comments in 2014 questioning official statistics about the ethnic diversity of Pollokshields. His remarks have been described by the Muslim Council of Scotland as completely unacceptable. I was shocked by Mr. White's comments, and I don't think they are at all appropriate for someone seeking to represent all Glaswegians. But I was appalled that the Glasgow Tories' official response was to shrug and say, "Nothing to see here." What he said was unacceptable, but the party does not care. If they did, they would withdraw his candidacy. The Scottish Greens will announce our full candidates list this week. We will stand in every ward, giving everyone in the city the chance to vote Green for a greener and fairer Glasgow. Voters can be confident Green councillors will do that, not just because of the impact we have shown this council term, whether that's championing free public transport or ending the 10-year pay freeze for foster carers, but also because our candidates are already fighting for fairness day in, day out. That includes Holly Bruce, our Langside candidate, who has spent much of the past year working as part of the Young Women Lead group on hard-hitting research exposing how unsafe Glasgow's women and non-binary people feel in our parks and on public transport. It includes tireless community campaigner Anthony Carroll, standing to succeed Councillor Kim Long in Denniston, who runs a pioneering community fridge project that redistributes food to people across the northeast of Glasgow, tackling food waste. And it includes Blair Anderson, our candidate for Patrick East and Kelvin Dale, featured in the Glasgow Times for his role in the campaign to end conversion therapy, as well as Elaine Gallagher, who is bidding to become the first transgender person elected to the city chambers as councillor for Southside Central Ward. Green councillors will work hard for all our constituents, and rather than feeling threatened by Glasgow's diversity, we will actually actively celebrate it. All those who want a greener and fairer Glasgow can confidently give their first vote to their local Scottish Green candidate on May 5, says John Molyneux.
From the Glasgow Times of Tuesday the 22nd of March 2022, from the opinion section, anti-abortion protests at Glasgow Hospital are shameful, by Katrina Stewart. Finally, all of you, be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Finally, says 1 Peter, all of you. There is no room for manoeuvre in that, all of you, yet the anti-abortion protesters picketing the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital every day of Lent seem to think they are exempt. Compassion is for others, not for all of them. For around 6 years now, for the 40-day run-up to Easter Sunday, a group of activists stand near the entrance to the maternity unit with their banners. Pray to end abortion, one reads. Does anyone care? Another asks. One quotes Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. They might argue their sympathy and love is for the unborn child, but what of the women they harass and intimidate with their presence? Have they no care for them? The group, 40 Days for Life, is an offshoot of an American campaign to dissuade women from undergoing an abortion. We should be firmly resisting any attempt to introduce American-style fundamentalist attitudes to abortion in this country. Attacks on women and healthcare from the religious right in the US are horrifying. Last year saw the rights and freedoms of American women to their own bodies under sustained targeting. Mississippi, where only one abortion clinic remains, has asked the Supreme Court to end constitutional protection for the procedure. Texas has banned abortions after 6 weeks, effectively ending most procedures for the first time since the pivotal Roe v. Wade legislation was introduced in 1973. Other Republican states are following swiftly. This is not the sort of political influence we want seeping into Scotland, an influence that seeks to remove the rights of women to have autonomy over their own bodies. Driving past the Queen Elizabeth the other day and seeing one of these protests, I felt almost sorry for them. Almost. 4 bedraggled protesters, 2 men and 2 women, standing silently with their pointless signs. But I'm in a privileged position, being able to feel any pathos. I'm not a woman trying to access basic health care and being faced with intimidation attempts disguised as care. Do these people not realise that for some women a child is desperately wanted, yet an abortion necessary for their health? Some women will have become pregnant through rape, or have faced other trauma. Even for the women doing the right thing, confident in their choice, it is grim to have to run the gauntlet of this judgment. For several years now, there has been a push to introduce protest-free buffer zones outside all Scottish clinics providing abortion services, but the Scottish Government has dragged its heels on the introduction of buffer zones, kicking the issue along the road. In its 2021 manifesto and women's health strategy, the SNP made comments to introduce buffer zones, but instead passed the issue on. It has committed to introducing bylaws for local authorities, and Green MSP Gillian Mackay is taking this forward in a planned members' bill, but COSLA, the body acting for local authorities, wants the issue to be addressed at a national level. Would these protests be acceptable in any other scenario where people were quietly going about their legal business? Would we now tolerate anti-gay protests outside a registry office? Would we turn a blind eye to anti-trans protests outside the GIDS service at the Sandyford Clinic? Anti-immigration protests outside multicultural resource centres? Absolutely not. They would be vilified, and yet there is largely silence around this targeting of women. Of course there are rights to balance here. The right to protest is valid and must be protected. Religious expression is valid and must also be protected. Buffer zones permit this. They allow for protest and they allow for freedom of expression, but away from where the exercising of the right to protest might cause immediate harm. Women in the UK have had the right to make their own reproductive decisions for 50 years now. They should be able to make that choice in peace and with compassionate support, yet will now have to wait another year at least for the protections to allow them to do so. It's not good enough. Meanwhile, religious protesters would be the first to echo Jesus' words, "Love one another." That they can't include women in that edict is hypocrisy of the worst order. This article was by Katrina Stewart.
From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 22nd of March 2022, from the news section. Cambuslang man caught with cannabis cultivation. A pensioner caught growing cannabis in his house said he was cultivating the plants to try to ease chronic pain. Glasgow Sheriff Court heard that police visited Patrick Trainor's Cambuslang house around 2:15 p.m. on December the 21st, 2020. Officers had received reports that cannabis was being grown in the property. When they confronted the 62-year-old, he said to the officers, "I'm guilty of growing cannabis and it's mine." Trainor's wife was also present in the property and he gave cops permission to carry out a search of the property and his garage. In the garage, police found 4 plants in the early stages of maturity. There was also a quantity of dried cannabis leaf. Trainor was arrested, cautioned and charged and said, "I'm guilty." Trainor's defence brief made the case that Trainor would be able to pay a fine for the offence, adding that he and his wife received about £400 a week as their income. The court heard he has no previous offences and has been of good behaviour since the incident. The lawyer said it was misadventure on his part and it has been hard on him and his wife. He is very nervous and emotional. Sheriff Alan McKee fined Trainor £400. That article was by Katrina Stewart. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 22nd of March 2022, from the news section. COVID staff shortages at Glasgow School see kids get just 2 days a week teaching. By Lauren Gilmore. A furious mum claims that her son is receiving just a day and a half of school per week due to staff shortages as a result of COVID cases. Susan Ewell from Sighthill said that parents received a letter late on Tuesday night from St Kevin's Primary School saying that they would be required to keep their children at home for 3 days per week until the Easter holidays in April. The school is part of the Sighthill Community Campus, which also houses St Stephen's Primary. The Glasgow Times has obtained a copy of the letter, which states the times and dates children are to be kept at home from school. Pupils will also finish at 1 p.m. on a Friday until April. It is understood more than half of the school's teaching staff are currently absent due to COVID cases. Susan said, "I work part-time for the NHS and I have had to use annual leave to look after my wee boy. We have not been given any support. What are single working mothers supposed to do with this? We have a duty to be at work, but we have no childcare or schooling. They left it too late to put any childcare provision in place." St Kevin's is a school for children who have additional support needs, and Susan said that her son needs to have a routine or he gets upset. She added, "His routine is education. and he is going to end up in a routine that means he isn't going to school, and I am going to have to coax him back. This is vulnerable children with additional support needs losing their education again when it wasn't supposed to happen. It is concerning because they will effectively have 5 weeks off for the Easter holidays. A spokesperson for Glasgow City Council said, "With the high numbers of positive cases in communities across the city, there is no doubt that many of our schools are affected in some way, with both pupils and staff self-isolating or who have the virus, but we have not had to close any of our schools. We are extremely grateful to all of our staff for their flexibility and hard work in these challenging times. Staff and young people will be reminded to continue to follow the advice and guidance to help suppress the spread of the virus, along with the mitigations already in schools to help achieve this." That article was by Lauren Gilmore from the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 22nd of March 2022, from the news section. Glasgow School of Art rebuild. £62 million project goes out to tender. By Deborah Anderson. Multi-million-pound contracts for teams to lead the reinstatement of Glasgow School of Art's fire-ravaged Mackintosh building have gone out to tender. An architect-led design team, project management and cost management roles have been advertised as part of the next phase of faithful reinstatement of the building. Details of the brief say it is to facilitate the development of the Mackintosh reinstatement for Glasgow School of Art. It requires to engage a professional team under 3 separate appointments, namely project management, cost management, and architect-led full design team. In January, a long-awaited report into the fire that ravaged Glasgow School of Art for a second time concluded that the cause may never be known, but willful fire-raising and electrical failure could not be fully discounted. The Scotland Fire and Rescue Service, SFRS, published the findings of its investigation into the 2018 fire that caused catastrophic damage to the prized Mackintosh building, as it neared the end of a £35 million restoration project following a previous blaze in May 2014. A GSA spokesman said it is vital they maintain momentum of the Mackintosh building project, and in parallel with the ongoing enabling works, phases 1 and 2, and the outputs of the GSA's estates strategy currently being undertaken by Hawkins Brown. The spokesperson added, "We have now begun the procurement process to select an appropriately experienced project team, comprising project managers, cost consultants, and an architect-led design team, which can deliver RIBA stages 2 to 7 for the faithful reinstatement of the Mackintosh building. This is in line with the Strategic Outline Business Case published in October 2021. We will be following a single procurement document process with the appointment of the team, identified through this robust process, expected to be confirmed by the GSA's Board of Governors in October 2022. Phase 1 of the project, the initial stabilisation works of the building, is now nearing completion. Phase 2 of the project, enabling works which will put in place a structure to faithfully reinstate the Mackintosh building, is expected to be completed by the end of 2024. This will also see the removal of the majority of the existing structurally supporting scaffolding. The Mackintosh project will be funded by insurance, philanthropic support, capital receipts from disposal of redundant buildings, revenue generation, and reserves. The fire report made a series of recommendations which suggested the masterpiece building could have been better protected. 50% of the building was said to be well alight within 38 minutes of the arrival of firefighters. The report said accidental ignition by something like a cigarette could not be fully ruled out, as well as a deliberate fire or an electrical failure. Coverage of the entire scaffolding structure was not provided, would suggest that a person or persons could have accessed the building via the structure undetected. CCTV footage taken from the sports complex building of St Aloysius College captured a lone figure in the car park approximately 3 hours after discovery of the fire. They were never traced by Police Scotland. The report found that the time frame concerning this individual did not coincide with the outbreak of fire. However, involvement earlier in willful fire-raising activity could not be fully discounted. The SFRS said it is also possible that the system supplying electricity to the office levels on level 2 could have suffered a fault condition in an unknown location. Kier Construction Limited was appointed in June 2016 as the main contractor for the restoration project. The report says lessons should be learned for other construction projects, particularly those involving big buildings of cultural significance. It said management teams responsible for delivery of construction or renovation projects should ensure that during the early planning of the project they fully consider the risk of fire. This article was by Deborah Anderson. Special. Madeleine McCann case to close after 11 years. What we know. By Natasha Meek. The investigation into Madeleine McCann's disappearance is set to end after 11 years. Madeleine was 3 years old when she went missing on May 3rd, 2007, while on holiday in Portugal. Her disappearance sparked one of the most high-profile missing person searches in history. Her parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, have vowed to never give up looking for their daughter. What is Operation Grange? The Metropolitan Police launched Operation Grange in 2011 at the request of the then Home Secretary Theresa May, sparking hopes in the Madeleine McCann case. The Met worked alongside experts across investigating forces in Europe, largely giving the lead to Portuguese authorities pursuing specific lines of inquiry. But now the special police investigation is due to be brought to an end, according to insider sources. Speaking to The Sun, a source said, "There are currently no plans to take the inquiry any further. The end of the road for Operation Grange is now in sight. The team's work is expected to be completed by autumn." It has left some people raising questions about whether or not the case's prime suspect will be charged with Madeleine's disappearance. In May 2020, Scotland Yard, working with German and Portuguese authorities, received hundreds of calls and emails from the public in a renewed missing persons appeal. A German prisoner became the main suspect in the joint investigation, a 43-year-old man named in media reports as Christian Brückner. He is reportedly serving a 7-year prison sentence for the rape of a 72-year-old American woman in Portugal in 2005. Though Christian Brückner has denied all claims against him in the Madeleine McCann case. Between 2013 and 2020, Operation Grange had received £12.3 million in funding. Investigators still consider the case a missing person inquiry because there is no definitive evidence whether Madeleine is alive or dead. That article was by Natasha Meek.
From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022, from the news section, adventurer and Paralympic gold medalist makes shortlist for Scotswoman of the Year, by Anne Fotheringham. There are 6 spectacular women in the running for the Glasgow Times Scotswoman of the Year 2021 award. Every day this week we are sharing their stories. Today it is the turn of adventurer, author and motivational speaker Karen Dark. Anne Fotheringham reports. Gold is a recurring theme in Karen Dark's story. Her working life as a geologist began researching gold in the Bolivian Andes. Then, in 1993, the then 21-year-old fell from a sea cliff, sustaining life-changing injuries. She awoke from a coma to be told she would never walk again. Paralysed from the chest down, she was determined not to give up on her twin passions of climbing and cycling. She bought a race chair and won gold in the women's road time trial at the 2016 Rio Olympics. Since then, she has become the first woman to handbike across the Himalayas, crossed 372 miles of Greenland's ice sheet while sitting in skis using her arms and poles, and climbed the infamous El Capitan in California's Yosemite National Park. She has also hand-cycled along the Silk Route, the length of Japan, and across Tibet. I feel like my life has been all about gold, and now it's about inner gold, about helping people turn unexpected events into opportunities, explains the Inverness-based adventurer and athlete. It's better to ask, how can I make the most of this situation? How can I focus on what it has brought me, rather than what it has taken away? Karen grew up in Yorkshire, but moved to Aberdeen to study a postgraduate degree in geology. I came to Scotland to study, but not just that, also because of the mountains, she explains with a laugh. I wanted to live in the north, surrounded by amazing Scottish mountains, and once I'd come, it was hard to go back. I'm not Scottish, but I have lived here for more than 30 years, and I feel Scottish. It's an honour to be considered for Scots Woman of the Year. Karen admits in the early days after her accident, she thought she would rather be dead than paralysed. She adds, I soon learned that with friends, creativity and perseverance, most things are still possible. It is thanks to those ingredients that I have a pretty extraordinary life. Pretty extraordinary barely covers it. Karen has spent more than 10 years as a full-time athlete. A silver medal at the London 2012 Paralympics came before that gold in Rio, and she's a European para-triathlon champion. She has an MBE, a PhD in geology, and honorary degrees from 5 UK universities in recognition of her accomplishments and contributions in adventure and sport. Recently, she received the Scottish Award for Excellence in Mountain Culture, testament to her heroic achievements, strength of character, and spirit of adventure. Karen is in demand all over the world as an inspirational speaker and life coach, and has written 3 books. After winning her gold medal, it was the 79th medal for Britain, and 79 is the atomic number of gold. Karen set up Quest 79, in which she is cycling 7 continents in 9 spectacular rides, raising £79,000 for spinal injuries research and support, and encouraging people to step out of their comfort zones and discover that inner gold. As part of Quest 79, Karen is currently in training to sit ski to the South Pole with Manchester Arena bombing survivor Iona Somerville as part of the Pole of Possibility expedition, a partnership with the Polar Academy. We want to inspire people, particularly young people, to believe in themselves and to understand so much is still possible even when it seems everything is against you, explains Karen. We are trying to raise £79,000 for the Spinal Injuries Association, and we'd be really grateful if any businesses or individuals out there can donate to help us. Karen adds, what I do now is about the mindset, about helping other people come to terms with the challenging and unforeseen and difficult events life throws at them. She pauses. Of course, I would never have chosen to be paralysed, she adds, but I'm grateful for the incredible perspective it has given me and the amazing life I lead now. If you can help support the Pole of Possibility expedition, contact Karen through her website, karendark.com. And that article was written by Anne Fotheringham. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022. From the news section, Glasgow Garden Festival site homes hailed. By Brian Donnelly. A flagship Glasgow homes development at a brownfield site has been hailed by City MSP and leader of the Scottish Labour Party, Anna Sarwar. Cala Homes West outlined its continuing commitment to investing in Glasgow after welcoming the MSP to its landmark Princes Quay site. Cala is delivering 203 homes, including 1, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, as well as duplex homes and townhouses at Princes Quay. The regeneration project, which sits on the south bank of the River Clyde, is being built on former brownfield land which was reclaimed from the partial instill of the Princes Dock Basin. Part of the site is also situated in what was formerly land used for the Glasgow Garden Festival, which took place almost 25 years ago. Pacific Quay is one of the 2 significant residential developments being delivered by Cala in Glasgow at this time. The other, located at Jordan Hill Park, on the site of the former University of Strathclyde teaching campus in the city's West End, including the conversion of the B-listed David Stow building into luxury flats. Graham McNeil, land director at Cala, said, Cala is deeply committed to Glasgow and its future, as evidenced by our £195 million investment in our flagship sites at Princes Quay and Jordan Hill Park. We are creating hundreds of construction jobs, boosting the supply chain, and delivering much needed high quality homes in a variety of styles that will encourage home buyers at all levels of the market to lay down roots in the city for the long term. Mr. Sarwar said, "We recognise that house building is more than bricks and mortar. The Scottish house building sector also plays an important role in Scotland's economy." And that article was by Brian Donnelly. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022, from the news section, Glasgow man whacked neighbour with metal dog lead after his pet was hit with a car, by Lauren Brownlee. A dog owner whacked his neighbour with a metal lead after his pet was hit with a car. James Ross hit Yang Lee with the item at Cedar Street in the north of Glasgow on June the 7th, 2020. The 48-year-old appeared in Glasgow Sheriff Court after previously pleading guilty to assault by striking the victim to the face and body with the lead. Fiscal Deputy Hazel Kerr said, Mr. Lee returned home with his vehicle at around 12:05am and parked. He exited the vehicle and started to walk away, but was approached by the accused. A verbal altercation took place between them. The accused said the complainer had hit his dog with his vehicle. An unknown female became involved in the dispute. The accused intervened in order to assist the woman. He reached out with the metal dog leg, striking Mr. Lee to the face, causing injury to his left ear and the left index finger. Police were called by Mr. Lee. Cops attended and took photos of his injuries. Meanwhile, a search was carried out to find Ross. He was chased within the area with 2 dogs and a metal lead. Ms. Kerr added, Mr. Lee made his way to the hospital. The accused was arrested and conveyed to the Govan Police Office. The injuries are noted as being small cuts. They were cleaned at A&E but did not need any stitches. Ross's lawyer said her client was walking to the shops where Mr. Lee mounted the curb to park his vehicle and struck one of his dogs. She added, the dog was uninjured as they were in the process of walking away at the time. The female who intervened was unknown to either of them. She got involved and said the man did not hit the dog. The male actually kicked the female to the leg. My client had walked on, but became involved again after this. He accepted he struck him with the lead. He does express remorse and does feel sorry for what happened. He knows he should not have behaved in that manner. There is a record, but he's not been in trouble since this matter, and has got nothing else outstanding. The defence solicitor suggested Sheriff Alan Finlay tag Ross as he was assessed as being not suitable for unpaid work due to health difficulties. She said, he has children and he is caring responsibilities for his grandchild while his daughter is at work. There have not been any further difficulties with the neighbour. They've not spoken. They see each other around but they don't engage with each other. Sheriff Finlay said, I'm told you will comply with the restriction of liberty order. I see you've done one before after an assault with a chain. Here we are again with a dog lead. Ross was tagged to his home address between 9pm and 9am for 8 months as a direct alternative to custody. The sheriff added, breach it in any way and you're in jail. And that article was by Lauren Brownlee. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022. From the news section, Glasgow named UK's most resilient city of pandemic. Article by Brian Donnelly. Scotland's largest city has been named the most resilient in the face of the pandemic in a new analysis of economic vitality across major UK cities. The Economic Vitality Index shows that since the start of the first lockdown, which started on March 23rd, 2020, found that Glasgow's rating has risen by 12.2%, reports our sister title, The Herald. The next best performing cities were Liverpool and Southampton, with rating rises of 7.3% and 4.9%. Of the 15 key city economies analysed by the Key Cities Tracker, London was ranked 7th and saw its rating fall by 0.7% during the past 2 years. Adam Kirby of JPES Partners, which created the index, said, Since the first lockdown, Glasgow has led the UK in terms of overall economic vitality, driven in a large part by the strength of many local businesses through the COVID era and a relatively resilient jobs market. Our new Key Cities tracker illustrates stark differences between the post-pandemic fates of UK cities. It's also beginning to highlight the next challenge, a cost of living crunch that is afflicting the whole country. But this too isn't the same everywhere. We've seen earnings struggling to keep up with inflation in many locations during the past 6 months, but less so in others such as Glasgow, Liverpool and Southampton. Working from postcode granularity upwards, the study rates locations across the UK on the basis of economic metrics, which are grouped around business density, earnings, employment levels, average residential values, and population movements. Looking ahead, economic divergence will likely accelerate further, Mr Kirby said. As the UK moves through this period of inflation, higher interest rates, and the ramifications of conflict in Eastern Europe, the ability to assess economic vitality on a detailed allocational basis will become increasingly important for a growing number of business sectors. In an article was by Brian Donnelly. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022, from the news section. Glasgow thug punched strangers in unprovoked attacks after a day of drinking in Glasgow. This article is an exclusive by Lauren Brownlee. A thug with a bad record for assault punched two strangers after a day of drinking in Glasgow city centre. Alexander Robson, 27, assaulted his two victims at the Clyde Walkway, Broomielaw, on July the 16th, 2021, after being out drinking with friends. Fiscal Deputy Hazel Carr told Glasgow Sheriff Court, at 6:20pm, witnesses were walking along the Clyde Walkway. The accused was walking in the opposite direction. As he passed, he deliberately shoulder barged Paulius Jonassus and turned around to face him in an aggressive manner. The accused shouted at him, but Mr Jonassus could not understand him due to his intoxicated state. He punched Mr Jonassus in the lip, causing a cut and swelling. He was dragged away by others unknown. Police were contacted and told Robson was still in the area. 10 minutes later, cops attended to speak with the witnesses. Meanwhile, Ewan Morrison spotted Robson approaching a woman, and he asked if she was alright. Ms Kerr added, the accused took offence to this and punched Mr Morrison twice to the face, causing him to fall down. When police were taking details from witnesses, the accused walked past and was pointed out. He was arrested, cautioned and charged, and replied, I don't know what you're talking about. Robson has no recollection of the incidents due to his drunken state. His lawyer said, unfortunately, he has no explanation as to why he behaved that way. He hadn't drunk in a while and went out with friends drinking. He ended up in a state and can't remember what he did. He recognises he's not dependent on alcohol, but he does have difficulties. Most of his offending is due to drinking too much. He is now employed and supporting his partner and their child. I would ask you to consider a community payback order with supervision for his difficulties to be addressed. He can complete unpaid work. Should the restriction of liberty order be imposed, his employers will accommodate his working hours around that. The defence solicitor said her client could also pay compensation to his two victims. She added, he was very frank and open in his discussions with the social worker preparing the report. He clearly recognises the impact his behaviour would have had on these two people. Sheriff Alan Finlay told Robson, comply with this restriction of liberty order. If you breach it, you're going to jail. You've got a bad record for assault. He was tagged to his home address in Maryhill between 7pm and 7am for 5 months. He was also ordered to pay £100 in compensation to each victim. And that article was an exclusive by Lauren Brownlee. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022, from the news section. Kirkintilloch man approached car and showed knife after being attacked by women inside. By Lauren Brownlee. A man approached a car and produced a knife after being previously attacked by someone inside. John Bankier appeared in Glasgow Sheriff Court after pleading guilty to being in possession of the offensive weapon on April the 17th last year. The 22-year-old from Kirkintilloch was on Friars Court in the town when the incident took place at around 8:20 p.m. Procurator Fiscal Depute Hazel Kerr said witnesses were within a car. They returned home and parked the vehicle outside. They heard a man shouting within the street coming from behind the vehicle. This was the accused. He approached the driver's side and produced a knife which was 6 inches long. Both witnesses were able to identify the accused. They made their way to Kirkintilloch Police Office. On arrival, police were told of the circumstances. At 11:40 p.m, officers attended an address in Kirkintilloch. The accused was placed under arrest and conveyed to Kirkintilloch Police Office. He was questioned and charged and replied, "I'll admit that I did have a knife." Bankier's lawyer said it was his client's first time appearing before the court. He added, he had been attacked by females, one of which had been inside this car. He was making his way home from a friend's home at the time and made the bad decision. There is a significant background. He resides with his mother and his family, who remain supportive of him. Sheriff Handel Finlay said, "I'll offer some unpaid work if he'll do it." The lawyer replied, "That would be my submission." The sheriff turns to the bankier and said, "I'm told you'll do some unpaid work in the community. Carrying a knife is always serious. This is a direct alternative to custody." He was ordered to carry out 135 hours. And that article is by Lauren Brownlee. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022, from the news section, Met Office forecasts Glasgow to be hotter than Madrid. Article by Nicole Mitchell. There's no need to pay for an expensive holiday as Glasgow is set to be hotter than Madrid. After some overnight mist clears this morning, the Met Office is forecasting another dry day for the city with spells of warm sunshine. The maximum temperature could once again reach a high of 18 degrees. Madrid, however, is forecast to only reach a high of 12 degrees. Tonight is also expected to be dry, with temperatures dropping down to a minimum of 5 degrees. And that report was by Nicole Mitchell. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022, from the news section, more than 7,000 new trees for Glasgow's Gartnavel Hospital. This article is by Catriona Stewart, columnist and reporter. Volunteers have planted more than 7,000 bushes and trees as part of a bid to enhance the green space at a Glasgow hospital. Staff from the NatWest group have been giving up their time to create part of a new hedgerow that will increase biodiversity at the Gartnavel Hospital campus. As told in the Glasgow Times at Christmas, since the first lockdown, use of the green space has gone up by more than 500%. The hedgerow will provide a natural barrier, affording patients in the adjoining wards some extra privacy without restricting access to the parkland. Terry Grieve, Senior Project Officer at the Conservation Volunteer, said, "This is about increasing biodiversity and tackling climate change, but it also helps to provide some more privacy for patients in the wards." The plants are all native to the area, including hawthorn, blackthorn, hazel, apple and cherry trees and bushes, which when mature will provide fruit for harvest. There will also be willow, which will provide opportunities for basket weaving, all parts of natural therapeutic activities for parents too. Duncan Conway, team lead for the volunteer team for NatWest Group, said, "This feeds into the key pillars of the bank in terms of helping local communities, and we are all Glasgow based, and we are all keen on the green agenda, and there's nothing more green than planting trees. It's nice to be out on a sunny day and to be able to bond with the team." During COVID, everyone was indoors, and it's good to be able to see everyone, and it helps us to recapture some of the team bonding which might have been lost. Fiona Sinclair, Voluntary Services Manager of the Art and Gart Mental Health Volunteer Programme at Gartnavel Royal Hospital, said she was delighted to have the volunteers from NatWest and Gartnavel. She added, "Without more and more people using the parkland, we want to build natural ways to allow a little more privacy for our patients in the wards. Once mature, the new hedgerows will provide a haven for wildlife and even fruit for harvest without limiting access to what remains a valuable community asset." And that article was by Catriona Stewart. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022, from the news section, teen amputee with train phobia stuck living across from Coatbridge Station. This article is an exclusive by Kirsty Feerick. The father of a teenager who tragically lost his arm in a horror train accident told how his son suffers panic attacks living across from a railway station. Heartbroken Kevin Finnegan, 45, has spoken ahead of the year anniversary of his son being hit by a train, leaving him with life-changing injuries. Tyler Finnegan was just 16 years old when he slipped onto the tracks at Motherwell Station on April the 2nd, 2021. The tragic incident forced medics to amputate his left arm, sew his ear back on, and treat his severe head trauma. Now aged 17, Tyler battles with extreme PTSD every day from the accident and has an extreme fear of trains, but lives directly across from Coatbridge train station. Kevin explained how hearing and seeing trains every day haunts his son, leaving him unable to sleep and suffering anxiety. He hopes the council can relocate them for the sake of his son's mental health and full recovery. Kevin said, "It is a really big issue. Tyler needs to get away so he can't hear the trains passing by, as he has really bad panic attacks. It is even worse when he sees them. We live straight across the road from the station and so can see trains from my house. I think if we got away that would help Tyler get to sleep at night. We have been offered a new council house already, but it's too far away from the shops and my family, so we can't take it. I just hope the next offer comes soon and is a better fit for us both." Tyler's mental health is extremely deteriorated as a result of his accident, leaving him rarely going outside and suffering traumatic night terrors. Heartbroken dad Kevin is desperate to give his son some independence and freedom back with a prosthetic arm, but it could cost up to £100,000. The NHS offered a basic prosthetic arm, which is like a bit of dead plastic, as sadly Tyler doesn't have enough bone left in his arm to operate it. Now Kevin, who works as a security guard, is working around the clock and fundraising to help raise enough cash to help buy a high-tech arm for his son, which would rely on brain power. He said, "It would mean the world to Tyler to get the arm he needs to get some kind of independence back. He can't do a lot for himself now, like tie his shoes or even shower by himself. He is very depressed and rarely ventures out the house now, but I understand that this is a big life-changing injury that he's had to go through." The NHS gave him a basic arm, which is like a bit of dead plastic, although it looks lifelike. Tyler's needing an arm he can use by using brain activity. I was looking at an American site and thought the prosthetic arm would cost roughly about £16,000, but the arm that he needs can cost over £100,000. Although things are hard here just now, we will get through it one day at a time. I'm just very grateful that he's still here, as it could have been a lot worse. You can donate to Tyler's arm at the GoFundMe page. A spokesperson for North Lanarkshire Council said, "We were contacted by Tyler's family on the 9th of March this year regarding their current living arrangements. An offer of suitable alternative accommodation within their chosen areas was made within a few days. This housing offer was turned down. We are treating this as a priority and we will continue to work with Tyler and his family to try and identify other suitable housing options." And that article was an exclusive by Kirsty Feerick. From the Glasgow Times, Wednesday the 23rd of March 2022, from the news section, Unite Union say First Glasgow workers are close to industrial action in pay dispute. Article by Sarah Campbell. A union has said that First Glasgow employees are close to taking industrial action over a wage dispute. Unite Scotland yesterday confirmed that around 60 workers will take part in an industrial action ballot to protest what they call an absolute insult pay offer. The union says First is offering a group of workers, including bus cleaners and shunters, an increase of 5.5% over 2 years. It said this would bring a number of workers to a wage of £9.48 per hour, backdated to last August, 2 pence below the adult minimum wage from April this year of £9.50 per hour. First confirmed it will comply with national minimum wage levels in April, and said all employees meet current national wage rates and will continue to do so after April the 1st. Sharon Graham, Unite General Secretary, said, First Bus's offer is a complete insult. It's 2 pence less than the adult minimum wage for this year, but with First Glasgow's company sitting on £12 million in profits, they have no business whatsoever in keeping workers on breadline wages. Our members are standing up against boardroom greed and will have the full support of Unite in their fight for better jobs, pay and conditions. Wendy Dunsmore, Unite Industrial Officer, added, Unite's cleaners and shunters are at the heart of the company, and they are the glue that keeps all the other sections together. Without this workforce, First Glasgow could not operate. Yet they are being treated without any respect, and they are in poverty pay with inferior terms and conditions. It's shameful that the workers are having to resort to an industrial action ballot. If successful, the ballot for industrial action will see strikes take place from early May to late July. In response to the impending threat of action, Duncan Cameron, Managing Director for First Bus Scotland, said, We have been notified by Unite of plans to conduct a consultative ballot on industrial action with Fleet and Facilities support members in First Glasgow. We are in negotiations with union representatives, and constructive dialogue will continue as part of that process. I can confirm all First Bus employees meet current national minimum wage rates and will continue to meet that criteria when the new national minimum wage comes into effect on April the 1st. Since March 2020, passenger numbers have fallen by nearly a third and have still not fully recovered. As a business, we want to reward and recognise our team members, but we have to balance that against rising operational costs we are currently experiencing. It is essential First Glasgow continues to operate on a financially sustainable basis to allow for further investment in zero emissions vehicles to continue our journey fully towards net zero emission fleet by 2035. And that article is by Sarah Campbell.
And that was this week's Glasgow Times news podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes with the publisher's kind permission. Thanks for listening.